Hello, fellas and ladies. What a bizarre time to be alive. Politically, things are, scary. Very, very scary. But I live in Canada where things are only kind of scary, but because of what the neighbors are doing. But movie-wise, what a time. Earlier this year, we had Sinners. Clear to anyone who watched it or even experienced the hype around it that we were witnessing something not just new, but almost like a new standard, a shift in tone, if you will. And then a few months later, distributed by the same studio, Paul Thomas Anderson, one of our greatest directors, directed by Boogie Nights, Licorice Pizza, The Master, Magnolia, Phantom Thread, There Will Be Blood, just to name all of them except for Inherent Vice and Heart 8, which are also good. He comes out with a new movie. And holy shit. This feels like what it must have felt like in 2007. When There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men came out like a month apart. After the success of Barbenheimer, Francis Ford Coppola said, "We are on the verge of a golden age of cinema." And watching one battle after another, so close to Sinners, in a year when Marvel and Disney are on a rapid downward spiral, I feel like we've made it there. I say that before Tron Ares with Jared Leto comes out next week, but hey, who cares? My thoughts on one battle after another are very complicated. I struggled to even get a cohesive thought on it after I watched it on beautiful 70mm IMAX yesterday. Did you know the entire movie's on 143.1? I didn't know that. Suck it, Nolan. And I was floored even in the moment, and I still didn't quite know how to process my feelings on it. So I saw it again with Amanda on 70mm IMAX, and this review will be my best interpretation of that, because I still have so much to process here. Because I know you've heard the phrase masterpiece and decade defining and all that thrown around for this movie, and it seems like a lot. And I think the moment you know that that is true is when you don't have everything figured out immediately. When Get Out came out, when The Social Network came out, when There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men, Parasite, even going as far back as The Godfather, I think if you leave a movie with a very obvious, clear, idea of what you have, even if it's incredible, I think, there's something missing. Whereas those films I mentioned and this gives you a lot to ponder on. I think that's the marking of something truly we fucking nailed it. One Battle After Another is the newest film from Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays a dude who was once part of a radical revolutionary group and is now an oaf pothead, raising a daughter on his own, played by Chase Infinity. And for reasons you'll have to watch the movie to discover, a manic officer kidnaps her, causing Leo to set out to go get her back. Like I said, you watch this movie, even if you don't have the clear idea why, you just feel like you watched something magnificent. Paul Thomas Anderson movies tend to have that effect on people where you watch it, you like it, you even love it. You just watched something excellent, but it takes a minute, even days, even potentially weeks to fully grasp what made that movie special. Licorice Pizza was a perfect example of a movie that I needed time to really grasp why I loved it, but I knew I did. This movie is overtly political, to a degree that I'm oh, did PTA stumble into this? I compared this movie favorably to Eddington earlier this year, a movie that I admittedly love more than most, but Eddington is very much of the moment, and timely doesn't begin to describe this movie, and yet there is a timeless element to this. When this movie takes place is a little vague. It doesn't mention Trump by name, but it's very clear that this is of that. I mean, we're talking detention centers, ICE, full-blown white supremacy. There's a character that either accidentally or I imagine not shares the name of a controversial Senate candidate, and I won't give that away. It's easy to find parallels to now, even though when this takes place is a little vague. What I say about that is the movie starts off, with a time gap. Where this movie ends up is a pretty sizable length away from where this movie begins, and yet the movie begins seemingly contemporary. The movie's entirely contemporary, and I think being vague on purpose, was part of PTA giving this a bit of a timeless feel. The whole point of this movie is that it could have been made in the 70s or 80s, and it was made now on VistaVision. We don't get VistaVision for God knows how long, and then Brutalist, and now this in like a year. Man, there's obvious like very radical stuff in this movie. Like you're gonna see some people like Sasha Stone's pissed off. I think people are gonna be pretty pissed off about this movie. For obvious reasons. It's kind of telling on themselves, but I'm being vague on purpose. There's a lot to this movie beyond just, racism and ICE are bad. That's obviously not just what this is. In fact, I would even say ICE barely plays a part in it. It's just an element. The title in general, One Battle After Another, has two different meanings. Basically meaning the fight never ends. Yes, there's a political angle to that, but also a little personal one. Paul Thomas Anderson's always very humanistic in his filmmaking. Phantom Thread and Punch Drunk Love in particular are... Did I mention Punch Drunk Love when I was rattling off this movie? Shit! Punch Drunk Love is one of his best ones. I forgot. But Punch Drunk Love and Phantom Thread are probably his most, human. Magnolia's pretty fucking human. They're all very human stories, but Paul Thomas Anderson never, leaves out that element. There's always a piece of himself he's throwing into his movies, and this one, he's very much throwing certain fears of being a father. of, letting that his daughter go, or letting her being afraid for his young daughter. That's a very strong element here beyond just revolutionary politics. This movie balances both of those flawlessly on top of being so fucking awesome. This is I would recommend this movie to anyone. It is 2 hours and 40 minutes and it zooms. I was kind of shocked how quick. I remember checking my time on my phone and an hour and 40 minutes had passed. I'm just what the fuck? The editing is insane. It's wild how this movie moves. I don't know how anyone could do that, and I think part of it is because it does take on genre tendencies. It's very funny. It is several moments where I was laughing hysterically. There's also a lot of thrilling chases. The movie even just from the beginning, the opening shot, I'm this is a thrilling movie. I'm actually a little scared. I don't know about scared, but I was definitely had this very unease in me as they're raiding a detention center. There's a chase sequence towards the end where the road, probably the worst road I've ever seen in my life. The road will be seared into your brain the way that it's used. The way this chase is written, I should say, is pretty unbelievable. The direction here is amongst his most thrilling for Paul Thomas Anderson. He has an incredible way with words in his movies. He's a great writer, but the direction, his direction is very underrated. I think it's because he's such a good writer, but this movie will throw that out. The direction here is insane. Perfectly balancing tone while making this movie fly by. Johnny Greenwood has a score in this movie, and dude went crazy. I don't know if it's better than his Phantom Thread score, but that's how do you beat that? But there are moments in with the music where I'm just yo, Greenwood needs to chill. Greenwood needs to relax. Performances across the board are amazing. I love post-Oscar win Leonardo DiCaprio. Since he won for The Revenant, he's kind of been playing losers. He's kind of shed the pretty boy thing from his persona. He played an alcoholic loser in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a spineless nerd in Don't Look Up, very like a weasel in Killers of the Flower Moon. And here he's probably playing his most morally correct character, probably, except maybe Don't Look Up, but he's still an oaf. He's very doofy. He's clearly a burnout, and he plays that amazingly. He's an actor that, in my opinion, gets very taken for granted. Because so many moments in this movie are elevated because he's playing it so fucking good. I'm inadvertently dressed like him right now, but he gives this character so much personality. And he does play that desperation and, fear very, very well, even if at times it was for laughs. I can't tell what was improvised because he loves improv now, but he is excellent here. Sean Penn plays a fucking maniac. He plays an obvious white supremacist, neo-Nazi motherfucker. But the way this character is written to be obviously pathetic for not just the obvious reasons of being a white supremacist, but Sean Penn plays him with this level of psychopath that feels so interesting. It's very over the top. I do not deny that at all, but Sean Penn does, but it works. Teyonah Taylor is very much a scene stealer, if not for the fact that she is only in the first 30 minutes of this movie, but she leaves the biggest impression. She has such a personality to her. She's the most morally interesting, I would say. She's kind of the lead of the first 30 minutes of this movie. The movie's very focused on her in the first half, the first bit. But she owns it. Like, she owns this first half, like, 30 minutes so well. Like, she really leaves an impact on you. Chase Infinity is also excellent. I think she definitely plays it blank for a little bit, perhaps by design, because that's part of her character. But she does definitely, like, kind of have this Star is Born moments towards the end that I was like, yeah, this girl's fantastic. Benicio del Toro is also a fun little standout. He's just kind of fun. He's just goofy. But he definitely, he's also a very easy standout. The entire ensemble's fantastic. There's these little performances also, and they're like from Regina Hall that really are effective. This movie in general, like when you hear people say this is like a decade definer, it's so easy to see why. We've had movies that have come out since the 2020s that are obviously gonna like be on the top of the decade lists when the decade's over. Some that come to mind are like Tar, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Oppenheimer, perhaps Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Zone of Interest, Brutalist, like the Dune movies. These are very clearly gonna like stand time. As I mentioned before, Sinners. The reason it's so easy to see that for one battle after another, beyond being obviously timely, is that you just know you're watching something like revolutionary. You know that years from now this is going to be like most PTA movies, a movie that they look at, like that filmmakers look at and say that was inspirational. Yeah, you can see this movie's inspirations. There's a lot of Repo Man in there, some French Connection. Like, it's all there. He even wears his influences on his sleeves. That's Paul Thomas Anderson's go-to. Going far back as Boogie Nights, when he was very clearly inspired by Scorsese. But you know when you're watching something magnificent. You know when you're watching something that is going to stand the time very well. And I don't have a problem being hyperbolic and saying that we have a movie that will define this decade, both encapsulating the moment we live in, like from a political angle for sure, but also the fact that it will continue to. One Battle After Another stands out as not only one of Paul Thomas Anderson's absolute best, but a film that will define the moment and the decade of cinema, with its propulsive and wild pacing and thrilling moments of political anarchy that all come together thanks to excellent performances and a grounded emotional core. It felt like almost an honor to be alive when this comes out, and I'm going to give One Battle After Another 9.5 Ghetto Leos out of 10. Ghetto Bob, really. But, Ghetto Leo. I don't really feel like talking about Oscars at the moment. It's going to win Best Picture, I feel like. Yeah, it feels kind of done. Congratulations, PTA. You're getting your first Oscar. Let's grab and share. Bye-bye.